Hello, good morning, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Noël Watillon. I have a number of EMA colleagues who are attending this webinar, and I think we have quite an important number of participants who will be listening and of course can ask questions afterwards. I have a total of 56 people who should be connected. I hope from a technical point of view everything will run smoothly. What we would like to do is first I'll give you a brief update. Then Anne-Sophie Horry-Eude will go through the main changes that we are proposing to introduce, taking into account first lessons learned. We then provide the possibility to have questions and answers. So I propose, taking into account the large number of people that are attending, that we go through the spokespersons first to see if there are from the industry associations any general comments, and then if people have very specific questions, you can put them in writing, and then we will address those. So I propose that we proceed in that particular order. Then we have a point 5, which is an update on the letters to industry. And finally, next steps and close of the meeting, and we should finish by no later than 12 o'clock. So perhaps we start with some introductory comments. As you will have noticed, we have we went live with the website on the 20th of October with the first 2 products. That later on we added 2 new ones in November, and we are currently on schedule to add 2 new products in the month of December, so prior to the Christmas break, as our Christmas gift to all of you and to the general public. Now, first experience from our side has been, and we will certainly further elaborate on that later on, it has been quite intense and very challenging, and we would like to thank all the companies with whom we have the pleasure to interact, that everything was done in a very positive atmosphere of collaboration. So that made also life, although it is complex, the whole exercise, but anyway easier in order to deal with. Understand from Anne-Sophie and colleagues who went to a DIA meeting earlier this week, that also there was quite a lot of interest, quite a lot of discussion, and overall positive feedback. Of course, we acknowledge that this is, how should I say it, for both sides there is a lot of additional work, but as I mentioned, the collaboration has been very, very positive. In terms of the feedback that we have received externally from different stakeholders has also been quite positive. We have currently a quite large amount of users. These were the figures end of November. We have 234 academic and more than 1,000 general users who have registered through this portal. The number of document views was 4,486. These are the figures 23rd of November. And the number of downloads of the documents was more than 16,000. Of course, the interest has been higher at the beginning, and then has decreased a bit, but overall we still see quite a lot of interest. In terms of how we plan to communicate further, we have opted, of course, for the launch to do a press release and a press conference. You will have noticed that for the 2 products in November there was a news item on the EMA website. We will do the same in December when the 2 new products will be released, or the data for the 2 new products will be released. But then probably as of, I would say, end of January, beginning of February, we will no longer highlight, so people will have to go through the website unless there are major new developments which you would like to mention to you. So this is a little bit introduction from my side. I understand that you have received the documents yesterday, including the presentation. So I will ask now Anne-Sophie to guide you through the presentation. And Anne-Sophie, perhaps if you could each time mention what slide you are, so that we can facilitate the people to follow. People are able to see on the screen. Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, Anne-Sophie.
Good morning, everybody. I will go through the slides briefly. Basically, the slides are made to highlight the main changes of the guidance, and it will focus on the 7 main changes. Next slide. So on slide 1, just in case someone has difficulty seeing them on screen, here you just have a summary of what we have in the guidance as per its publication in March 2016. Under the introduction part, you have a procedural aspect, CCI and anonymization. The majority of the changes for this month are on the procedural aspect, almost none on CCI and very little on anonymization. And in fact, we update the guidance as it goes from the experience we have with the product. So this is mainly based on the experience over the 4 first published products, as well as the few ones we are currently working on. So next slide, slide 2. As Noel mentioned, we have 4 products published. 2 were in October, 2 were in November. You here have the detail of the number of documents published, almost 400. Number of pages, more than 260,000. And in terms of CCI redacted, we have a small number of 8 pages over the 260,000, which is very, very good. So that is more just for your information about where we are. So over this exercise of going through all the documents published, here we have the website Statistic. I will not repeat because Noel gave the same number, but at least you have them in writing. So during the exercise on the 4 first publications, as well as the product we are currently working on, we have 7 major changes that we'd like to flag to you. The first one is about CSR from previous submission. Basically, CSR submitted as part of or cross-referred to from another regulatory application and for CSR that are in the scope of the policy will be included to be published. This basically, if you take the example of the pediatric product, if you take example of an extension of indication for pediatric use that would be part of the policy 17, then that would be subject to publication. If you take out of the scope all CSR already submitted in a past application, and here for pediatric we have specifically all CSR under the Article 46 of the pediatric regulation. For those who are not that familiar with it, meaning 6 months after completion of a pediatric study, the CSR has to be submitted to the EMA outside of any other procedure than the Article 46 of the pediatric. If you do not include all those previously submitted CSR from Article 46 procedure, and you reach an extension of indication where the big majority, even if not everything, were submitted under the Article 46, you end with an empty publication. So if you speak transparency and you go for an empty publication, it doesn't make much sense. Therefore, it was decided, specifically based on pediatric example, that CSR previously submitted would be also part of the publication. Next slide, it's number 5. So the second major change is about the out of scope. Here, it's more a technical change. We first advise, especially from all the experience we have had so far, to discuss during the pilot phase all the document or the part of the document that you would think be out of scope. So it's easier if from the beginning we discuss them together to be sure we are on the same page. Then when you speak technical, the out of scope are the line listing with per patient per visit data. Those are considered IPD, and therefore the pages have to be removed, not redacted. They have to be cut. However, the page numbering has to stay, that it's fully transparent on how many pages were removed, and there should be a blank page in place of the cut, and a statement should read, out of scope of phase 1 of policy 70, per patient per visit, line listing. This is in order to be fully transparent to what has been removed and how many pages were removed from the document. But please do not redact and don't have plenty of black pages. The third main changes is about flagging the importance of a complete package. Basically, the package, when coming through the system, will then be validated, not so much in terms of what is the substance, but about is it a full package and is it a complete package? And when we speak complete package, it's not just the document, not just the justification table, but also the cover letter and the declaration that are supposed to be in the cover letter. So please be very careful that your submission is complete, including cover letter and statement or declaration in the cover letter. Otherwise, it will not go through the validation, and you will have to resubmit the complete package and not just the missing letter. So it's very important that before you put it in the system, you ensure it's complete. Second point linked to the incomplete package. Basically, some of you may have experienced that the system, when sending you a document with this very specific naming convention, you have a technical message with a best practice warning. Please ignore this warning and continue loading the document. This is due to the naming convention, but there's nothing that will prevent you from loading your document. So just ignore that warning. Next slide, which is number 7. It's about Cci and Ppd labeling. Again, this is quite a technical, practical aspect, which is being here updated. So in order for the reader to know what type of redaction is under the box, we have decided to go for a labeling. Everything which is commercially confidential to be redacted should be a black box with a CCI in red written on, and everything which is PPD should be under a blue box with PPD in black written on. This is valid to be labeled for the proposed package as well as for the final package. And as you may have seen already with the first product, this make very clear for the reader to what is CCI versus what is PPD. And if you add that to the out-of-scope blank page, this is also very clear what has been removed from the document. So again, this is to make fully transparent what's behind the scene, basically. Going for the next slide, which is number 8. When you go through the submission of the final redacted document package, you will have to put a cover letter. We have updated the template of the cover letter to include some statement about full agreement and partial agreement. What do we mean by full agreement, partial agreement? Full agreement means the company will agree fully with the outcome of the redaction consultation, which was made by the EMA, and will then choose a statement full agreement, meaning committed or certifying that the document submitted follows the comments and the outcome of the EMA. You also have the possibility to choose partial agreement. Partial agreement is very specific. It's not just about, I do not agree with everything, and I will give you partially the correct document. A partial agreement is linked to an interim relief proceeding, meaning either you fully agree or you partially agreed, but this goes with a court case. It cannot just be a choice of not fully agreeing. So you will find in the new template those two statements, full agreement or partial agreement with interim relief proceeding. And this also is reflected in the formatted table when you submit the package. We will see that in one of the next slides. The next slide is slide number 10 about marketing authorization transfer. Again, this is based on experience over the past few months. When you have the transfer of a marketing authorization during the redacting consultation phase, the transferee will take over from the transferor. Basically, there will be no interruption of the process. There will be no interruption of the redacting consultation phase. And we are asking you to inform the EMA contact point you have for the redaction consultation phase. But we do not expect any interruption. And we expect on your side that data, information, knowledge is directly transferred to the transferee. Next slide is number 10, and this is the last main change of the guidance, basically the formatted table. So again, this is very practical. The formatted table is when you submit your package. Basically, the ECTD sequence of the procedure is to be included under the point 10. And you will see again in this formatted table, sorry, here it's becoming very technical, that we have added, again, this full agreement versus partial agreement, and again, partial agreement mean interim release. So you will see those two statements, first in the cover letter, as previously explained, as well as in the formatted table when you submit the package. So this is the end from the main changes to the guidance. Lesson learned from our first experience, we can say that we see less CCI than we usually see in access to document, which is, we could say, positive. The anonymization, we are all on a learning curve from your side, from our side. This is why our pilot phase are usually quite extensive and the discussion are quite extensive. Please follow the template of the anonymization report. Write it clearly. You have to remember it's a document which is going to be published, and therefore the public is supposed to be able to understand it. So it has to be very clear. It has to be adapted to your product, to the type of study, but it cannot just be the general approach from a company. It really has to be tailored to your procedure. The identifier must be clearly listed. The data utility must be considered. The report must match what you propose as reduction. We had cases where the anonymization report is not so much in line with the PPD proposed, so it's very important that if the reader read the anonymization report, they can understand what you redacted under the blue box of PPD. And the labeling of the reduction linked to the anonymization report has to be PPD, and it must be followed. We have very extensive pilot phase for those several months and for the months to come. Any discussion you may have on section or document in or out of scope, please flag them for discussion. It's better that we double check and we ensure that we are on the same path, let's say, than we have the surprise when we have to publish at the end. What is next? So this CDP guidance is a living document, so it will be regularly updated as we having experience with the procedure. The pilot phase is currently continuing, and it's very resources intensive. It brings a lot on both sides, and we are learning a lot, but it takes a lot of time to prepare the package and to guide correctly. The waiting list is of about 100 procedure. Bear in mind that the products which are falling under the policy are from January 2015. So we have a waiting list from opinion started to be adopted in September 2015. We are now taking the product chronologically from opinion date. We currently have 4 products published. We hope to soon release 2 other products. And for the time being, company have been contacted for 15 products for which we are either at pilot phase or reduction consultation or reaching the end of the process. So letters are sent to all pharmaceutical industry about 2-3 months before submission of the proposed redacted package. So please start to think or to even work on your document based on the guidance and see how you can apply the guidance to your document. That will make a more fruitful discussion when we enter in the pilot phase. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. Starting now with the discussion round, I propose first that perhaps I should have mentioned it at the beginning. We will produce a high-level summary report. Do not expect that it will be directed towards this person said that, what is the EMA's reply. So there will be like an overview of the issues that have been raised and any actions that follow the discussion of today's exercise. So that should be submitted to you over the next few weeks, acknowledging that we have a Christmas period in between. In order to structure the discussion, I propose first to have a discussion about the more general aspects and that we then go through the specific issues with the changes that are being presented. So perhaps slides 11 and 12 first, and then we can go back to the other slides with the more concrete proposals. So I open the floor to lessons learned from first experiences and perhaps also what is next. And then if that discussion is finished, then we can go to the more detailed proposals. So perhaps first the identified spokesperson. So who wants to take the floor? If you can also mention your name, of course, and your affiliation. Okay, so we're doing some technical adjustments here. Okay. Okay, so who wants to take the floor?
I can take the floor as I'm Merete Jørgensen from representing FPM.
Sorry. Can you mention your name again? It's not very clear.
Yeah, my name is Merete Jørgensen.
Okay.
And I'm speaking on behalf of FPM.
Yeah.
First, a little technical issue. Unfortunately, initially I could see everyone on the screen, but now it's just blank, and I have not been able to see any of the slides. So I don't know if it's a general issue or it's. I hope not, but I might afterwards have to log off and log on again to see if that solves the problem. But now to the comments that I would like to make. We are, of course, very thankful for the possibility to discuss these the policy 70. And also to obtain a better mutual understanding of all these requirements in order also to avoid some repetitive work. It's of course a learning process, especially for the anonymization process and report. and feedback desired on the approaches, and also we understand that the process so far has been very positive as well. We do understand that there is, of course, a backlog and we appreciate the lead time of 2 to 3 months that we will get noticed. However, I think it would be nice for the industry to know better on EMA's plan on when we can actually be expected to submit these documents. We also appreciate that there's some more clarity on the scope of the documents, both in terms of the documents themselves, but also the bits and pieces of the documents. And I think that will be very welcome very much if we can agree on a process so that we can avoid repetitive work and having to go back to documents which we might not think was in scope from the very beginning. Then further, we also would appreciate that several companies will be going through this for the first time, and we understand that many companies have been very happy about the support and the discussions they have had up front with EMA. So we would very much like to welcome if at least companies could be helped on this in the first place. Then also there's a discussion on what is patient listings, and there also the narratives could be considered a part of patient listings because it contains a lot of information across the visits, even though it's written in a more narrative way. So I think that was my more general comments on this.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps we will each time address, perhaps others may have similar questions, and then go to the next spokesperson. So I perhaps start. I will ask other colleagues to complement what I'm saying. Yes, we recognize that we are all on a learning curve. So that's why we are at this moment not that worried about meeting these deadlines that we have put, or these timelines, that put it like that, rather that are mentioned in the policy and in the guidance documents, because we would like to have it as of high quality as possible, and that will take time. Each time when you start with a new company, it is on a new learning curve. Certainly for the company concerned, but also for ourselves, because we identify each time issues that probably are not yet covered. So that's why, as Anne-Sophie mentioned, this guidance is a living document, will remain a living document for the next months to come. We indeed have a backlog. I mean, and you add approximately 8 to 10 products each month of the CHMP meeting, so that will become a challenge. We are hopeful, however, that in the course of 2017, when more and more companies will become familiar with the process, that it will run more smoothly. So we're paying more attention at this moment on the quality, what is being submitted, than on meeting these particular timelines. And we will take the time in order to make sure that everybody understands. So there will be a kind of nurturing process with each individual company. We recognize that there is a need in order, it was also a feedback from the DIA meeting, that there is a need in order to, how should I say it, to be more clear in terms of our communication. So that's certainly a takeaway message that we will further reflect upon over the next couple of days, how we can give more guidance in terms of what you have to expect at a given moment in time, so that you can prepare when it is needed and that you don't start preparing when it's too early. So we will reflect on that further. Perhaps for the other questions, I don't know who wants to take the floor. Anne-Sophie?
Yes, you're right when mentioning the waiting list, and indeed in the slide we are approximately we have 100 product or procedure, more than product, in the waiting list. Just to give you a rough idea, as I mentioned, we are taking product in chronological order of CHMP opinion being adopted. We started the first product and the first opinion received was September 2015 for the first procedure falling under the scope of Policy 70. We now have reached February 2016, and the company we have contacting are more or less the company who had opinion along the line of January, February 2016. So we're going chronologically. So if you have product, you will have a better idea depending on the opinion date of the product. Coming back to your comment about the patient line listing, that indeed was clearer, as well as how to flag it and when to discuss it. Narrative, we do not consider narrative being directly PPD reduction. Narrative, if redacted fully, partially, have to be flagged and explained in the anonymization report. But again, should you have doubt about line listing of narrative to be in or out of scope of the policy, please flag it when we start the pilot phase. If we do it at the very beginning, at least it will be clear for the entire process of the reduction consultation.
Okay, can I ask the next spokesperson?
This is Peter Bozak on behalf of UCODE. I have a practical question concerning the clinical reports submitted at an earlier stage. These may have been drafted at the time when the policy was still in preparation or even totally unknown. Is it correct that the EMA will then take a flexible approach towards reductions?
I don't know what you imply by a flexible approach towards reduction. The principle of reduction of CCI will be applied the same way that we speak about old or less old CSRs. The PPD reduction, he's explained in the anonymization. It's not so much about how old is the CSR, but what is your product and what is the population, what are the size of your trials. For the time being, anyway, all the product, even published, are based on all CSR, and they were all submitted prior to the Policy 70 being written. So that they are all CSR or not, they will be discussed and approached the same way. And again, any doubt, we'll be happy to help and clarify during the pilot phase.
Next.
Mats Eriksson from Amgen and FP, and we were asked, since we were one of the first companies to go through this process, to comment, and I know time is scarce here, but one point I jumped a little bit when you mentioned that only 8 pages out of 160,000 pages were removed because CCI, and that's very, very little. And I was wondering, given all the effort going into this from the company side, you heard us telling us, last Wednesday during the DIA meeting, we spent 3,500 vendor hours trying to locate what we think needs to be protected, and I don't think anything was actually accepted. I was wondering whether you could, to the guidance, add examples of what is acceptable, not of what is not acceptable, but how far do we have to go in our justification to prove potential damage? We cannot prove with 100% that something will damage us, but how far do we need to go in our justification? Could one imagine that to add that to the new version of the guideline?
Just to be precise, when we didn't remove 8 pages, there were 8 pages where there was some reduction. So it could be a word, it could be a sentence. So just just to be clear on the language we are using. But that's not the main point of your question. When it's about CCI, we cannot give example of CCI. We have made as much as possible clear what nature and where in the Annex 3 to the policy, which is to be read in complement to the what is not CCI in the guidance. So if you pull the two together, you end having a clear view of what can be considered or not in terms of nature. What is CCI is to damage the company. So the company is the best person to know what information, if given out, would damage their commercial interest. And we are expecting to see in the justification table those explanations. If you want to have a thorough reading of what we have, yes or no, consider CCI, many of you have experience with access to document, and over the past 3 years, we have applied the same principle of CCI in access to document. So I would really strongly advise to liaise with your teams involved in any recent or less recent ATD, where you had already this justification template table in place, and when you will maybe in a clearer way see what CCI or not, and the same principle apply to the proactive publication. So that is, I would say, if the team on ATD from your company work closely with the one on clinical data publication, I think you will have a much clearer idea of what we consider or not CCI.
Hi, it's Chrissy Fletcher, also from Amgen, and just to follow on from Matt and our experiences with one of our first publications. On slide 11, thank you for your lessons learned about or experiences today on the anonymization aspects. I think it is still very difficult to understand your rationale for the changes to the guideline about the IPD, that if you consider, if you were to present all patients, all visits, that's seen as IPD. But if you have some patient level data, but you're not presenting all visits, then you're considering that still in scope for publication. If you've got any kind of patient level data and you've got direct and indirect identifiers, then whether you're presenting all visits or some visits, isn't that all IPD? And my second question is, again, it is early in the process. I didn't know, we were wondering, out of the 4 publications to date, have you had any actions arising out of the anonymization reports that you've received? For example, whilst on the CCI side, the process is quite clear and documented about where there is agreement or not about how the data has been anonymized. It's not so clear cut on the anonymization side, as obviously it's early. And for example, if the EMA's role is only advisory, then can that be clarified in the guidance? We do obviously have a discussion with you. You do review the anonymization report, but the actions are maybe a bit less clear.
I will try to address all the points. I mean, I'm not sure if everything you mentioned there was really a question behind, but I will try to clarify. When people speak about IPD, unfortunately, there's not always a common understanding of what we are speaking about. Some people is the data set, for some people it's the raw data, for some people these are the line listings. So IPD seems to cover a lot. We wanted to try as much as possible to define IPD in the context of the policy, meaning our understanding or our I would say our criteria for IPD. So here the IPD, which are clearly out of scope, are line listing of per visit, per patient data, because they are indeed really patient on each and single of data on every single patient. Looking at the 4 cases we've published as well as the one ongoing, the definition for each company about what they consider IPD is very different. The way the CSR were written is very different. Some line listing are as annexes, some line listing are put in the middle of the body. Some narrative are put in the form of a line listing, but finally could also be in the form of a text. So it's very difficult to draw a line. And here I'm speaking only about 4 products. So, and we have seen already a lot of differences. So, which is why we said, surely line listing with per patient per visit are considered IPD. Anything else that you may think is out of scope, the best is to flag it at the beginning, and then we will be able to say yes or no if we consider it in scope or out of scope. And from those experience, we'll be able to better clarify the guidance. But the diversity of the shape of CSRs, of the way companies are writing CSR, even within company, if they were written 20 years ago or 2 years ago, bring on the table very different concept of line listing and slash IPD per patient per visit. So it's very difficult to give general guidance. We're trying as much as we can, and on the basis of customized pilot phase, we're trying to update the guidance, but a general concept is very difficult. So surely per patient per visit is out of the scope and is considered IPD. Coming to the point of CCI being very clear, anonymization less clear. I mean, CCI is based on the experience from access to document. The access to document process is now 3 years old, and we have experience with the CCI, which has helped a lot shaping the CCI for the proactive. For anonymization report, it's a new concept. It's not just PPD identified for an access to document, it's PPD identified to be put on a website. And therefore, as any new concept, we are all learning from it. So as we are learning, we are trying to update as much as possible our guidance, our template. So please bear with us. As soon as we have new information to clarify, we will put it in. But yes, it's a learning curve from both sides. And it takes a couple of months to make things clearer.
And perhaps to add to what Anne-Sophie mentioned, acknowledging that this field of anonymization is a field which is further developing, at least we have made a starting point by providing a guidance document which didn't exist anywhere. And of course, this is not, let's say, yet the ideal solution. We recognize that further work is needed. I think during a previous webinar, I already mentioned that we would like to establish a so-called technical advisory group on anonymization. Because of a lot of other issues, we have not been able yet to progress that further, but in the beginning of next year, we'll probably launch a public call for expression of interest to experts to be part of that technical advisory group. And those experts can come from academia, from patient organizations, from pharmaceutical industry. We can give further details at the beginning of next year, but it's certainly something that we would like to do and to see how can we, on the basis of the current guidance, further develop this all together, because at the end of the day, we are all in the same boat. Once again, with the aim of increasing as much as possible data utility of the information that is being published. A next speaker.
Beata Stemniewska from Medicines for Europe, if I can now take a floor. Thank you very much for organizing this webinar. I think also from our side, it was even the competition who can attend, so I think that is also a big interest, especially as the first generic product also is one of those 4 which passed this process. And it's indeed a bit a question related to the fact that one of those products was generic. Can I communicate and conclude it somehow that it should be seen as a bit a model for others to know what could be expected and how it should be presented? So for me, I would say the first one somehow becomes a standard and model. So please just have a comment on this. I think that also a bit to echo on the planning. It's obviously very useful to get the message, I would say 2-3 months in advance. But maybe if you could think about like a projection. Is it going to happen in the first quarter, second quarter? That helps a bit internal planning. I think that might be useful. And the third question is, because I received, for example, some quite detailed questions in advance of this webinar, if it would be considered confidential or not. Obviously, there are two possible way of dealing with this. It's a part of the question, part of the discussion, or possibility to ask this question in advance before the submission and have a clear answer. Or the second option is to have a discussion during the process. So my question is, in fact, is there any possible way of clarifying certain things in advance before the company is really applying for this? Is in the process of publishing the dossier. Yeah.
Okay, I will reply to your second question. I think that's a quite good proposal that you try to work with, let's say, quarters. Certainly something that we will be looking into. It has been difficult in order to say we will start as of that particular moment, because also the team was and is still not yet completely established. Mentioned before that we are not recruiting additional persons, so it is a reallocation of resource within the agency, and as you can imagine, it always takes some time before people can be moved from one to the other part, taking into account ongoing work that the persons have. We should be able, I think, as of the beginning of January, to perhaps be more detailed in our planning and working with the quarters. I think that should be okay to give you some indication. But we will reflect on that and we will come back to that. So for the first and the third question, I don't know who will. Anna as well? Or no? Okay. Anne-Sophie starts.
Coming back to your mention about the generic and asking if it can be a model, the one which is published currently on the website can be indeed taken as a model, but only if there's no patient identifier, in the sense that generic has published here did not have any study on patients, meaning there was no patient identifier, and therefore this can be taken as a model if the application does not have any patient identifier. If you have a bioequivalence or any study that would, in addition, and then you would have patient in, then you cannot straightforward use it as a model. So this one can be taken as a model if there's no patient identifier at all.
Okay, that's very clear.
Okay,
and the third one was more on the way how to clarify certain very specific questions. Can it be done in advance, or it's part of the process?
Okay, Anna Gross.
Hi, my name is Anna Gross. So, of course, the agency is always open to communication. You can always contact us and ask specific questions about products. However, we do have this pilot, so which is a more detailed, more thorough understanding of your questions and organizing theses. So, if you have general questions about how to prepare the documents or how to approach in advance, that's fine. But if you have specific questions and detailed questions about which report, what to do, how to include, I would say the pilot is designed to go through in-depth questions.
Okay. So if it's on the process, you can we basically can ask in advance. If it is more on the detailed elements in the information from the studies, then it should be the part of the discussion when the product comes on your desk, right?
Yeah, but as I said, you can always send us questions. You can always approach us. Yeah.
If I may add, it's Anne-Sophie Henry speaking. Basically, company will receive a letter 2-3 months before the official submission. During those 2-3 months, we will do what we call the pilot phase, working together with you very closely, questions, TC, or even face-to-face if needed, before the official submission. So for that, you will receive a letter and you will have even the name of a contact person. If you have any more general question prior to that, it will be treated as a request for information and it will be treated by the team. So if you haven't yet been contacted via those later, then you please use the web form to ask a question to the EMA. It will go to the same clinical data publication team, but that would be the way forward. So use the web form if you've never been contacted, and it's more for general process question. While once you are contacted, you will have a contact person, and then you can ask all the detailed question you'd like to ask.
Thank you very much. That's very clear.
Any other questions?
This is Cini Escola from SBS speaking here. Before we go into more detailed questions, which I'm sure we actually have quite many still left, I wanted to bring the discussion back to the question and the concept of us having the living document, the procedural guidance. And that is well appreciated that, of course, we need to gain experience and based on facts and findings and dialogue, then go and update the guidance. What SBA would like to propose, though, is perhaps a little bit more structured approach to this. So like we have webinar today, can we perhaps schedule similar kind of things in more permanent basis for next years to come? Perhaps it is quarterly or every half a year, however agency thinks most appropriate, or how much you think the guidance is going to be updated. Because we do think that the changes, for instance, introduced now in this phase, the cover page document where you kindly gathered what is to be changed, they can have significant impact the way that companies operate, and therefore dialogue would be needed ahead of any changes are introduced. Would this be acceptable approach to EMA? Could we look into more structured way of updating the guidance with dialogue with stakeholders?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I think we wouldn't have any problems with that. What I do not want to do, because I have to carefully think about, also you think about resources, we have to do the same, is that sending out the document, receiving a lot of comments back, and doing this whole exercise about updating, I think that is very resource intensive. So the proposal to have a webinar, let's say, every quarter, I think would be a good way forward. If we see that there is because of the experience we are further gaining, that even, let's say, for the first half of next year, we would need more than every quarter, we're also willing to do that. But we have to see, is there really anything new coming out? But we can schedule every quarter for next year. If there is a need to do something ad hoc, we can do that as well. I propose, because I recognize you receive things a little bit late, and that we will send that earlier to you with the main issues that we have identified, and then the proposed changes to the guidance document. So let's schedule quarterly meetings for next year, possibility for exceptionally an ad hoc meeting if there is a really urgent need. We'll send you the main changes that we want to introduce with the revised guidance document, and then we see how that then will further develop. Acknowledging, as we have said, this is a living document, so we will, nothing is put in stone. Any other general questions before we?
Yes, this is Marin on behalf of UCUP, and I would like to raise a topic which we haven't discussed. I mean, we have addressed previously, speaking on behalf of companies that do not have enough resources for these additional burdens, and they for the mid-sized companies. And having addressed this previously, I would like to raise on behalf of the companies a specific question. As you explained during the first presentation, that you would like us to replace line listings by blank pages. And even this a small aspect within the whole activities would create new need for republishing the whole document. So would perhaps for this specific additional aspect you would like to address in the revision of the guideline, would EMEA be willing to do specifically this change?
Melanie Carr.
Good morning, it's Melanie speaking. Yeah, here I would say, we are offering more support to SMEs going through the process. As I understand, your question relates more to the mid-cap companies. What I would say is we are offering additional support in terms of advice as to how to approach it through this pilot phase. So as your companies are going through it for the first time, if there are practical issues that cause problems, I think we could perhaps discuss it based on real cases and see how they best be addressed rather than sort of generalizing in advance. Because I don't know if any of your member companies have been through it yet, but if there are concrete issues to discuss, it's probably the best way to approach it.
That's very highly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further general comments, or can we move? I'm aware of the time. We have 1 hour left. Can we move to the more specific aspects?
This is Julie Holtzapfel with AstraZeneca FPA. I had a couple questions coming out of recent experiences. First, thank you. The pre-consultation meetings are quite valuable, having gone through them with 2 packages so far. A couple open items that I wanted to raise for consideration. We've had discussions around the importance of considering how we look for achieving clinical utility with the packages that we release. One of the key areas that we believe that this is achieved is through the various data sharing portals that we have that we offer researchers to really get the actual data in a secure fashion. And we have had discussions in our consultations regarding retaining the links and references to those portals where we can encourage further clinical utility in a safe, secure manner, where we're able to disclose more data than we can with the redaction techniques in the public disclosure at this time. And so the ask is really for EMA to consider the position around the value of having those links directly in the anonymization reports for readers that come to download these reports from the data site and being able to see where they can go to get more data easily without having to try to scour the net to find it. The second question or comment is really around the challenges that we find as a company with making some of the legal compliance statements that are being requested. Our Privacy Council has reiterated in conversations the challenges with lack of consistency in global law, as well as lack of clear implementation requirements to truly call data anonymized, and therefore really feel strongly that we are not in a position to make the legal compliance statements that are requested from the agency within the package. And so we want to put that on the table as a concern and a limit that will continue to be a challenge for us. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for those 2 questions and comments.
Okay, perhaps for your second comment, that we will discuss that further within the legal department. So not all colleagues can be present today. I think it is better that we reflect on that statement further internally. The first comment, I have to disappoint you, I am afraid. There may be complementary actions undertaken by individual companies in terms of data sharing agreements, etc. First of all, we have to recognize not all companies are doing that. Only a number of companies are doing that, and the public may get completely confused in terms of if they are going through the various data packages for different products, then it is mentioned in one place, it's not mentioned in another place, we get a lot of comments, etc. So if you're doing that, fine, but I think we are working here within the context of policy 70, which is an EMA policy. We recognize, as I mentioned at the beginning, that for personal data anonymization, that we are on a very much on a learning curve, that we have to further improve, taking into account lessons learned. I mentioned the establishment of this technical advisory group with experts on anonymization, where we will hope that also pharmaceutical company experts will be able in order to assist. And I think that is, according to us, the best way forward. As I mentioned, you are completely free in order to have any particular data sharing agreements with academia, but I would see that as a complementary action, and I am not inclined in order to make the link within the policy 70 and these additional actions that are being undertaken by not all of the pharmaceutical industry. Any other comments? Sorry.
Well, there was just one more comment from FPL and Amgen, Mats Eriksson again, and this is this question of copyrighted content. I know I just heard that your legal counsel was not able to participate, so it's maybe a question to transmit to them, but it's still a problem when we have content that is where we don't hold the right to further distribute the content, or where we have third-party confidential information that we are somehow contractually bound not to disclose. And I don't know how to progress on this one, but I think that further conversation around this might be necessary.
Okay, we note the comment, and we'll see if we can address already, or can provide already a reply within the summary of the report that we will be preparing. Okay, there seem to be written comments as well. Can we have them on the screen? Yes. As long as they are general. Oh, sorry for that. I'm not sure that everybody... Does everybody has access? Can everybody see the written comments? Or not? Okay. So I try to read. I'm aging, so that it's not that. I want them bigger. Thank you, Valerie. So from one second, we are trying to. So from Peter Bogart, can you please let us know whether following publication of clinical data, there were requests for access for the same document or regulation 1049/2001? If so, how many? And is the market authorization holder always consulted in case of such request? Yeah. So Anne-Sophie, and I'll make a general commentary.
Yes, we have received access to document for the same document as the one falling under the proactive publication. But many of them were before the publication was out. Some are still, as we call, queuing, because the requester has many other requests that they would like to have treated as priority, so they haven't. One has been released as an access to document. It's exactly the same document as the one which has been there published. And when we had the ATD treated separately, the MAH was indeed consulted as per our normal process in the access to document.
We raised this issue with the European Ombudsman before the summer break because, like I said, we would like to make best use of the available and limited resources, and we had a follow-up discussion with the Office of the European Ombudsman earlier this week, where our approach is that if there is a document that will be published or a package that will be published under Policy 70, that at that moment we will give priority to the publication under Policy 70. And that was found to be a proportionate approach by the Office of the European Ombudsman. If the person who is then accessing the website and is looking at the data is not satisfied with, for instance, the type of redactions that have been made, then subsequently a request for access to documents can be made. And then we will treat that under access to documents. So this is the approach that we are going to have. We know that there is that there will be a time gap still for 2017 between the adoption of the opinion and the Commission decision or the withdrawal letter of a company, for instance, and then later on the publication of the data. We will try to do our best to have that gap as quickly covered as possible. But everything is also in your hands because I will repeat myself, 90% of the access to documents requests do not come from the general public. They come from pharmaceutical industry. So, the next question is Hartmut Landgrebe. How should the EC3 lifecycle be maintained for the redacted and non-redacted versions in parallel, best avoiding conflicts between agency dossier content and public documents in the redacted mode? Okay, this is already a specific question. Nevertheless, let's go through all the questions in writing. Okay, who can reply?
And Sophie, again, this is very technical question from people who are dealing with ECTD. They are not in the room, so we'll be happy to take it in writing and answer in the summary.
Yeah, we will answer in the summary. Julie Bryan, if the ICH E3 template is not followed and the primary data listing section is not labeled as Appendix 16.2, will they be considered to be part of the CSR body and therefore in scope of Phase 1? Can we say yes or no?
To this question, so if you have line listing which are per patient per visit, and they could be, we had the case, could be in the CSR body, as we call it, they would be considered out of scope. However, again, it would be extract of the line listing per patient per visit. Any other line listing would be subject to discussion and should be flagged to see if yes or no really out of scope.
Okay, the next question from the same person about submission of data which were previously submitted before Policy 70. We will address that in the detailed questions when we go to the first main change to the guidance. Christopher, I hope I will say the name correctly, Marshall say, if we cross-refer to an existing marketing authorization application owned by a second company, how do we handle the reference studies?
If we cross-refer to an existing lineage owned by a second company,
probably we need to discuss that one further internally. I think we look at the faces. There are a lot of question marks on the faces here at EMA. Milan Shah, as per the updated guidance, changing the background color for PPD will make hiding in plain sight concept difficult to implement in assessment. Any guidance on that?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Does it mean that for the audit version to be submitted in the proposed package, it would be plain sight? If your audit version, by using the blue, does completely cover the words, I would then suggest you label with PPD only, not with the color, and then we would see. But someone from the CDP team is going to answer the question. Radu Popescu.
Yeah, Radu Popescu here. So I think we've got the idea from the meetings of this week about the hiding in plain sight for PPD. But I think most of the reductions will be related to anonymization, and there will be very few, or as you already been made aware, there will be very few elements that will be redacted as CCI. So at the end of the day, this will not make any difference in terms of reduction. So as long as those elements are redacted, the expectation is most of the reductions are going to be PPD regardless whether you use the blue color or not in principle. So I don't think we need to change the color labeling for the reduction. Whenever you're using other anonymization techniques, obviously you're not going to use a reduction box, so this will not affect hiding in plain sight concept, if this makes sense.
And I propose, because I see that more and more people are asking written comments, so I use my prerogative as chair, and I'm going to see other general questions, and we will reply to the specific questions in writing afterwards. Otherwise, we will never be able to go through the whole Q&A today. So I'm trying to look into. I'll go to Joan Plumb. Whilst it is understood that it's too resource intensive to update the guidance on a very regular basis, does EMEA intend to publish a list of frequently asked Q&As on their website? Yes, I would say yes. Do not expect this to happen in January already, but we will do our best in order to have a free a Q&A. Then a log of lessons learned, good practices. I think we can combine that with the Q&A document. Merite Jorgensen, this is also a detailed question. We will probably reply in writing. Sorry, I'm trying to read very quickly. Okay, I propose that we take all the other, we will reply to all the other questions together with the summary report that we will be providing, because they are quite detailed comments. I would now like to go back to the presentation and to go through the main changes. So let's start, because there were several questions raised. Let's start with slides 4, clinical reports submitted as part of previous other regulatory procedures. Somebody who would like to take the floor? Hello? You're all still there? There are no comments or questions on this part, which we considered one of the major issues. But can I if I don't hear, I will continue.
Hi, it's Christy from Amgen. So can we just clarify then on this change, that is the real issue making sure that what's in and out of scope is discussed as early as possible? So some of these changes that may be identified can be avoided, late changes can be avoided, and that has been some of the experiences that some companies have seen. Yeah,
sorry, we will do that. I was still on slide 4, and I was surprised that there were no comments. So once again, I would like to see, are there does everybody understand what we are saying? So if there are, if you have a data package submitted after the 1st of January 2015 and a cross-reference is made to data that have been submitted before the 1st of January 2015 in the context of pediatric extension of indication, but it can also be for other data, we would ask the companies to resubmit those data. And the main reason is, I think at the end of the day, it's also in your favor, because what do we have with this publication of clinical data? The public, for the first time, will see what are the data that underpin the scientific review process and on which basis a decision is taken. So if only part of the data, even important data, have been submitted for whatever reason before and a cross-reference is made, the public may not understand. Secondary analysis may be done, and people may ask, oh, but I mean, that doesn't seem to be a very robust scientific assessment that has been made. That's why we also found that for the sake of transparency and for the sake of demonstrating the robustness of the scientific review process, it would make sense that those data are being resubmitted. Okay, we identified that for the first time in the context of the pediatric extension of indication, but this is only one example. So there may be others that we haven't seen yet, and that's why the change to the guidance is being proposed. So there are no comments or questions on this.
Well, no, I think there are. I mean, Mats Eriksson from them. So you're considerably increasing the scope here. And so the pediatrics, I think we understand. But for other documents, surely you're talking about reports issued after the 1st of January 2015. You're not talking about old legacy documents that somehow briefly cross-referenced and so on. Where do you draw the line? Because it will create uncertainty, I think.
No, that is a valid comment, and indeed we do not want to circumvent what we have said before about legacy data. If those studies that have been submitted are pivotal in terms of the taking the scientific for the scientific review and for the basis, the evidence that is used for the ultimate decision, then I think it's in everybody's interest that those data are being also made publicly available. Of course, there will be nuances because you may cross-refer to data which are perhaps not that important for the final decision-making process. But at the end of the day, it's a certain judgment that you will need to give, and also that can be clarified certainly whilst we are trying to have more experience in this field, because we have seen it in the context of a pediatric extension of indication, and indeed there may be more pivotal there than anywhere else, but it would be good that also that is highlighted certainly during the pilot phase as early as possible, so that we then can discuss with you and see, no, we think it should be submitted, or there's no need in order to submit. And then we can fine-tune the guidance later on with additional examples or information. I'm looking at my colleagues if they all agree. Apparently. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I'm just fear because that people will, if you say that it's any document that's cross-referenced somehow or mentioned, but it didn't really form part of it's essential part of the CHMP assessment, then there will be confusion whether that document is in scope, and I don't think there should be. So I think somehow if you phrase it in such a way that it's clear, the pediatric side of things, I think, is understood. But for other documents, that you clearly state that it's something that formed an essential part of the regulatory assessment, not just any document that is somehow cross-referenced.
I accept your point. So we will amend the, I don't know how exactly it is labeled. We will double check how it is currently how it is currently written, and indeed the main driver is what are the essential data on which the CHMP has based itself. Is that is referenced, for instance, at the end of the day in the assessment report, in the EPAR, etc., and people will start double checking, and people will double check, then they will get confused and say, but that information is not made available. So we accept your comment that we should make it clearer in the guidance. And once again, I would advise, certainly during the whole pilot phase, discuss this up front as early as possible so that everybody can prepare in advance.
But just to be clear, Noel, it can very well cover legacy documents.
Is that Peter?
Yes, sorry, Peter Bogart here.
Yeah. That's a legal question now, Peter, no? No.
Clarification question.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Pretty old documents, basically.
Yeah, once again, if it is an essential part, so we are not asking for all data before the 1st of January 2015, let that be clear, to be resubmitted. But we have seen, and one can argue, okay, perhaps that could have been identified earlier, but we're also learning from this whole exercise. So if it is an essential part, it is better, also in view of how the data can be scrutinized afterwards, that it's made clear on what basis, what evidence the CHMP has used in order to reach its conclusion. But as I mentioned, we have to do it in an approach which is flexible, where we have to see is it essential information or not, and therefore the pilot phase, in order to clarify, is a useful tool to achieve that. Anne-Sophie?
I fully support there's the legal point of view, there's the workload point of view, and workload is quite close to my heart. Don't you can guess why. But there's also what we promised to be transparent on, and that's where we need to discuss and be very pragmatic. If, for example, you have an extension of indication with a single pivotal study and plenty of supportive, and the only one which is missing because was submitted before is the pivotal study, the transparency on the assessment is a little bit weak. So again, as Noel mentioned, it has to be looked on a case-by-case basis. We had the first case with the pediatric where if you think everything has been submitted and is legacy data, then there was nothing to publish at all, which is far from being transparent. And if finally you only publish supportive data and no pivotal study, then again, we need to be pragmatic. So that's where it's better we discuss on a case-by-case basis when we have line extension and extension of indication, because it's far from being simple to draw the line and have general principle.
Any other questions on slide 4 on this particular aspect? Or can we move to the next one? Okay, we move to slide 5, out of scope. So there was a question already from Christine Fletcher, I think. But perhaps could you repeat? I think we may have now forgotten.
Yes, it was the differentiation between when you include all patient-level data for all visits, and you see that as IPD, whereas if you do reference other patient-level data, but you haven't included all the visits, you're not defining that as IPD in the scope of this policy. But others will, have different. You mentioned there are different definitions of what IPD is. But from a anonymization point of view, we'd be taking a view that looking at direct and indirect identifiers in the text of any documents, and where any patient-level data is referred to, looking at data privacy and making sure that data is protected.
again, as when it's about the line listing, we are absolutely sure of is out of scope. It's the per patient per visit. It's very difficult, again, to draw a line and define because none of the company we are working with are writing their CSR the same way, basically. And even within a company, if you take a CSR written 10 years ago and a CSR written today, it's not written the same way neither. So for some of them, we have very clear ICH ECD structure guidance followed. For some, documents are much older, so they're not followed. We find line listing in the middle of the body of the CSR. We find line listing to the right place in their annexes. So it's because we are facing a very different CSR that it's very difficult to say this is out of scope and this is where it should be in the CSR, because that's never the place we find them, basically. So, which is why the one we are sure of is per patient, per visit line listing, that they are in annexes or that they are in the middle of the body of the CSR. And for the rest, if you have doubt, the best is to flag it to them, and then we can advise you as best as we can.
Okay.
Any other comments on slide 5? Do we have a written question? Or? No. Okay. We go to slide 6, incomplete package. Any comments? Can you move to slide 6?
We can't see it yet.
Yeah, we
Actually,
now you can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, this is Fabien Peffer-Celgine. I actually had a comment on the slide before. I was trying desperately to get unmuted, which is now.
So slide 5?
Yeah, slide 5, please. I would just like to come back on the case made by Maren. I think that should not be underestimated. I understand the idea. I think it's a good idea to when these pages would be replaced by blank pages instead of redacted pages. However, I mean, we talked about the small companies. I think also for the large companies, this is going to be a significant resource issue and additional time. I'm concerned about the timeline because in a validating environment with controlled documents like most companies have, what this requirement means is republishing completely clinical study reports at a time where very little time is available, because there is a requirement to have the pagination. So I think hence the proposal to wonder if it's something that EMA plans to do, or if the assumption, at least if the assumption could be made clear, is it the assumption that the sponsors are going to provide these blank pages?
To be brief, yes, that's the assumption.
Okay, well then my comment is valid. This is going to be an issue. The timeline is going to make that difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the comment that Anne-Sophie mentioned about how the dossiers are being put together as well. So, what we have seen only going through, 4 or 6 dossiers so far, so it is a huge inconsistency between what one company is doing, what another company is doing. So perhaps as part of this exercise, we also may achieve some harmonization, which would not be bad for the future. But okay, we have to deal with history. Radu, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just to point out that practically this out-of-scope part has the administrative component in it to address, for example, we received a question saying that the whole 16.2 was actually included in the CSR, and we wanted to give the companies the option to remove pages as a solution for those reports that are not written as per ICH. So we can't, we didn't want to be very prescriptive and very rigid, because we understood that the reports are written differently, and we are dealing with nowadays with reports that have been prepared years ago. So definitely this solution will not make everyone happy. I mean, it will solve an issue on one side and generate some additional technical, let's say, or additional workload, but we wanted to have it there as a solution for such, you know, from an administrative perspective for such cases as well. So we, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I just wanted to flag that because we may need to come back on that issue with more substance or examples. But I agree with the idea. It's a good idea. Hence, I just wanted to flag the technical difficulties that may occur in some cases.
Yes, and that is well understood. The only other thing I mean, there's a lot of perception outside, so you can imagine that the way that everybody, regulators, pharmaceutical industry, has been criticized about extensive redaction of document. If you go out with a document where certainly you have 20, 30, 40 pages which are completely black, you can see the heading already in some of the journals, medical journals, about how transparency is being dealt with. I think there is a lot of perception there that one has to address, and this is also one of the reasons why we think we can do it in a way which does not add to that particular perception.
Mats Eriksson from Estia. The only thing is, when you make changes like this to the guideline, will you give us companies enough time to adjust, because we may have planned for something else? The question is, when you make this kind of technical changes, will you, when you publish a revised version of guideline, give you as an implementation period? So because there are lots of technical issues here for us that we need to address internally. So we may need, I don't know what it would be, 3-6 months, but would you consider that?
Well, I mean, we are giving the information at this moment, so we hope that information can be taken into account for anything which is planned. I'm a little bit surprised by the 3 to 6 months in order to implement it, or hopefully not the time needed in order to make the changes to one particular data package. So, I mean, this is what. Yes. Sorry, yes?
No, it's but we may, or a company may already have started, with preparing a package, and then there's a new guideline. The question is, does it apply from day one? The day it's published on your website, is that what, is that the final say? Yeah. If you have started already, then you have to redo it.
Well, we have done.
This is Cini.
Yes.
Cini from FBI. I wanted to confirm what Matt is saying. That is my understanding also from the feedback from FBI member companies, that many of them who expect to start the procedure of policy stability are doing some preparatory arrangements according to the guidance that is now published on the website. Any changes like this one may have quite a big impact, so I think the clarity would be needed when these new changes shall apply, and is there any flexibility now, for instance, for companies who have already started in a different way to prepare for their submission to take into consideration?
But okay, I'll start, and other colleagues will come. But we have applied it to the first product which was published. So it is already being implemented at this moment. So Melanie and Anne-Sophie.
Yeah, it was just to highlight really that, bearing in mind that we're only at the start of embarking on the implementation, that things like this, which are probably big learnings from the first handful of dossiers, we are in the impetus is to communicate them rather rapidly, so those preparing for the publication process can take them into account. But those that are already engaged through the pilot process will have been made aware of this by the EMA. So that is indeed why we are wanting to communicate and update the guidance as rapidly as possible, so those gearing up for publication can have the latest learnings and latest guidance to work to.
Anne-Sophie here. In fact, the idea of this webinar and of updating the guidance is that as we are meeting those cases, and trust me, every single procedure is a new case, we are discussing with the different companies how to best address the inconsistency in the way CSR are written, the out of scope, which are in the middle, in a funny place where it's not supposed to be, or because at the time it was the place it was supposed to be. So we're giving to you the freshest changes we may have had. The one here on the slide 5 with this page cut, and technically speaking, cutting the page is no more difficult than redacting the page. But the fact that you have a statement reading is completely fresh. The document we are working on which we have agreed with the company to go along that line, is going to be published. So we could hardly give you more up-to-date information about our best way to advise you. Again, we have extensive pilot phase. Again, in the coming months, we'll have new cases that none of us even thought we would have to meet one day. And we will have, again, to adapt those guidance and to try from all sides to be pragmatic in how we address the issue and how we communicate to the outside world that the reader can see something very clear. So, as Noel mentioned, is not written in stone, is the best we can do with what we have in hands today from all sides. And it would be difficult to give you more up-to-date information, knowing that it's really as we are dealing with the product.
Okay, let me also put, because I mean we are not, we have of course our view. If you have a better solution, anything than redacting with black text, let us know. But I do not want to see redacted text pages and pages, because it creates a perception that, frankly speaking, we can do without. So if you have anything else that you can offer, why don't you do so? If we don't, then this is the way forward. So I'm putting, perhaps Christmas time is always a good time to reflect, but I'm putting the ball back to you. So if you have another proposal which does not go into the direction of redaction and having black pages, fine, think about it. If not, we will continue with what is being proposed now. So, but we are open for any particular practical suggestions that you may have.
Thanks, Noel. Ginny again from SBS. So that's well appreciated, and thanks for the explanation. I think that having these quarterly meetings, webinars will be one way where we can change and exchange the information, and it's changes to come. So I'm sure this will go okay in the future.
But that's fine, Cindy. But then I would say, since this is for you so important in terms of workload, etc., if you, because we will start implementing this now, unless we hear a different proposal from you. So I would not wait. If you would like, if you can find an easier solution to implement according to the criteria that we have mentioned, don't wait until the end of March. So I would say come then back as quickly as possible, and then we can even have an ad hoc discussion on this. No problem. Melanie?
Okay, I'll take that action back, and we'll provide any additional feedback if there is any.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think indeed having placeholders for quarterly updates is a very good idea, but bearing in mind that we are at the start of the journey where we're going to have a lot of experience, where there may be changes which we want to communicate rapidly. I think you have to be realistic that at the outset, so in the first 6 to 12 months, there may be more changes in short time frames, but that will taper off as we gain more experience and the pool of products grows.
Okay, and thank you for the discussion. We move to slide 6 now, because we have to speed up. We have 15 minutes left. Incomplete package, any comments? If not, slide 7, Cci and Ppd, the color coding. Any comments, questions? Slide 8. Don't be afraid now, huh? We still have 15 minutes. So. Final redacted document package cover letter. Perhaps these are less controversial, I don't know. Nine, a very specific case about that we have been confronted with was a marketing authorization transfer, which, okay, we didn't think about, but okay, this is one of these things which may happen. So this is how we have proposed to deal with it in the future. Sure, there will be other cases in the future. 10. Sorry? Okay, if there is no comments on slide 5, on slide 10, sorry, we have to go back to slide 5 with some further questions. So can you put the questions? Sorry, we're going to go back to the questions, the written questions. And we're going to make it bigger. So slide 5. Okay. So somebody here, can we be unmuted? Are people unmuted?
Yeah, can we reply the suggestion?
Okay, so which one do you want to reply? To which question? Yeah, slide 5. Julie Holtzoppel, out of scope listing mechanisms. Could EMA consider allowing a wide redacted overlay on page 1 instead of a new page inserted? Okay, can I propose, because there may be other proposals at the level of industry, can you perhaps discuss that first within the industry? Because what I don't want to have is 25 different proposals. So why do you perhaps consider amongst the industry associations about if you find a better solution than we currently are proposing, and this proposal from Julie can then be taken into that particular discussion amongst yourselves. Peter Bogaert, the follow-up question of release, is that release done without imposing terms of use? Okay, we take note of that, and we will... yeah, oh, yes, well, yes, Peter, I don't know if you're still on the line, but yes, under access to documents, there are no terms of use. It's a completely different mechanism in order to provide access to data to one person, not to the general public.
Thank you.
Ruben?
This is Ruben Peter. On this particular question, although there is no terms of use as such, the regulation foresees in Article 16 that the disclosure of the documents shall be without prejudice to any existing rules on copyright, and it also reduces the right to reproduce or exploit the released documents. So, to some extent, it is a restriction into how the documents that are released under the scope of an access to documents can be used by the requester.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Then Christopher Marshall say for slide 5, the policy should regulate the wanted visible result and not a technical solution whereby it is achieved, i.e. not require recompilation of CSRs. Do you want to further explain? Is it possible for you to speak? Or not? Sorry? Yeah, can you speak louder, please, because it's difficult to hear you.
I'm just making the point here that there are maybe, rather than defining a technical solution in the policy documentation, if we define exactly what the agency wants, depending on the capabilities of the company, they may have different solutions, and that way you will always be up to date, because what ultimately is important is what you want to be visible to the reader, and not the technical tool or method used to achieve it.
No, that is a fair point. Anne-Sophie?
When you have the discussion within the association to come with some proposal to which we are fully open, bear in mind for out of scope, what we would like in terms of visible result is shouldn't be redacted, because what is redacted is CCI or PPD, is not out of scope, and the reader can see clearly that we have removed something which is out of scope. So keep in mind those criteria to have your proposal put on the table. That would help a lot. Thank you.
Julie made a proposal. You could just overlay a white page with maybe a stamp, given the same text statement that you are suggesting. It would achieve the same result and potentially technically easier. So I think that you should be defining. You don't want to see a black redacted page. You want to see a clean page with a clear stamp making the statement you define.
Yeah, once again, I mean, that's fine for us. So have a discussion. I want then one counter proposal from pharmaceutical industry. So discuss that. You have time in order to do that. If we see the expected result, how you do it, it's fine. But you have to bear in mind we already received questions from academia who said, how are you going if there was this particular issue about the following of the pages, etc., if pages were to be taken out, how we would deal with that. So there are people outside aware of the fact that they may not see the complete package because of a number of reasons. So therefore, we have to be transparent. If something is taken out, not because it's CCI, not because it is PPD, it is not within the scope of phase 1 of the policy, then we have to be transparent about that. So, but it's up to you to find the solution. If you find a better solution than what we are proposing from a technical point of view, feel free to do so and inform us, and then we will further discuss. Okay, Fiona Ricci, marketing authorization transfers. Can policy 7 work be transferred at the time of mutual agreement to the companies involved?
It's when they have the official transfers?
Yeah.
It's how transfer marketing authorization works. Once you have the official transfer of the marketing authorization, together with all the legal implication behind, then we consider it transferred, and then that's how you informed us. What the main message here is not to interrupt the process. That's the main message. And when you have the official transfer done, then you just give us the new person to contact, basically.
Merete Jurgensen was a comment on slide 10. Okay, we will need to take that into account. We will double check that. Julie Bryan, can you please address Uncutting's question about scope? So can we move again to the up to see Uncutting's question? Uncutting, okay. Going back to the question on scope and the impact of submitting non-ICH E3 study reports, would that bring into scope the appendices that otherwise would not be in scope, or can a different version of the report with just the in-scope appendices be submitted? Can we?
So I think from a practical perspective, we had so far reports that were not written as per ICH and were not submitted as body of the CSR and ICH appendices as separate documents. So we had, I think, all the possible options of either preparing the the document and submitting it for the scientific review. Then I think the guidance so far allows you to either, submit the CSR body and the appendices as 4 separate files. If regardless whether you submitted them as 4 separate files or you submitted them as 1 document, so we are not making any restrictions. So whichever option for you it's easier, we agree with it. The other situation is when everything is in 1 document and you're extracting or removing the pages or the parts that are out of scope, and you can have in 1 file the CSR body and all 3 appendices or the sections that correspond to those 3 appendices. Or equally, if it's easier for you, you can extract from the 1 file the 4 documents, the CSR body and the 3 appendices. But once again, it's whichever technical solution or whichever it's easier for you. The scope of the policy is clear. We want to have the CSR body and the 3 appendices published, either as 1 document together or 4 documents, separate documents. So how you achieve that, it depends on what's more easier for you.
Okay, we are coming to the close of this teleconference, or this webinar, sorry. Perhaps I will conclude by saying that, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for the very cooperative approach. I think we had a good exchange of information. The following actions then from our side is, as I mentioned, we will provide this summary report, high level. We will also address and in an annex the questions that have not been discussed today. This summary report will be after the will be put after the Christmas period, so will be at the beginning of next year. We will start organizing on a quarterly basis these webinars, providing you with the latest changes where relevant to the guidance document and the guidance document itself. We'll do that a little bit earlier than we are currently doing it, so that you can have a better read of the documents before we are having the webinar. If necessary, we can always organize an ad hoc webinar if the need arises. From your side, in relation to the out of scope, so we are open to any particular technical solution that you may envisage, as long as the expected result, as we have elaborated upon, can be achieved. So we'll be waiting for your reply. We will proceed now with what we currently have. So because we cannot stop everything now, and in case we have, of course, out of scope sections. Otherwise, there's not going to be a problem. So the quicker you can provide us with that, the better it is, and we can also have a follow-up teleconference or webinar in order to address this specific issue if it raises questions at our side. If not, I think then it can be a quite straightforward solution. Anything else from our side? No. Then I would like to thank you very much for having participated at this webinar, and I use perhaps a little bit early still, but nevertheless, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and see you all in good health at the beginning of next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.